Production underwriting for Ruckus has been made possible in part by the generous contributions from Fred and Lou Hartwig and from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon, joined by the Ruckettes. Woody Cozad, who runs the Cozad Company, a lobbying firm. Mary O'Halloran, a media and communications consultant. Yael Abouhalka, columnist and editorial writer for the Kansas City Star. And Gwen Grant, president and CEO of the Urban League. Well, the news this week suggests that budgeting is not the Kansas City Police Department's forte. Chief Darrell Forte and city officials now agree they underestimated the cost of the much-discussed East Patrol Crime Lab. It was the centerpiece of a successful push in 2010 to renew the public safety sales tax. Voters were promised a state-of-the-art lab at $57 million. Cost overruns now put the price at $74 million, $17 million over budget. Officials are trying to figure out what to do next. What are their options, Yael?
Well, one option is to spend a little more money and give the people of Kansas City what they promised. A modern crime lab, that's a big crime lab that will be around for 30 or 40 years and really help the Kansas City Police Department solve crimes more quickly. That's one option. The other option, which is kind of the police option, police and police board option. The city's option is, well, we're already borrowing money to make this a bigger project. And you're going to have to live with a smaller crime lab than was promised to people. Now, it will be bigger than what you have now, but it will not be as big as you want. I'm really looked into this and actually working on a piece for this weekend, but one thing has come across to me, and even though I wrote the editorial about a week ago showing all these cost overruns, not just for here, but for police communications, and then also how they're going to have to cut back on the Northland Patrol Station, the cost of that one. I think at the end of the day, we need a modern crime lab. And that's where at least the police have to prove to the public, and that means at the meeting next week, that they have really good reasons for building a 70,000 square foot station that ultimately they'll be able to staff, and here's what you'll get for it. If they cannot do that, then the city will probably win.
You keep referring to the city and then the police.
Yes.
This is a joint effort. Does it suggest anything about the need for
local
unity,
control?
Local control?
God, Mike, that's a good question. Well, yes, it does. And, you know, right now, behind the scenes, the police and the city are very kind of pointing fingers at each other. And my take actually is, well, yes, the police had some bad cost estimates, but don't forget this. The city added, and I mean the city hall, added some cost to this project by saying, well, we want it in 27th and Prospect. We want to take these 4 blocks of homes. So there were deconstruction costs, there were consultant costs, all that kind of thing went into the project. The city has added a gymnasium to the project, which I know is good for the community. I know the police would like. But the city's added some stuff there, so how about more city money into it, not from the police tax funds?
And Gwen, the taking of those lands created quite a bit of controversy, did it not?
It did create controversy for those homeowners who were displaced, and apparently they, when negotiating the cost of their homes, the city or I think the city underestimated how much they would have to pay out to acquire those for land acquisition. But I think that the city made the right choice in choosing to make this investment on 27th and Prospect, where they're making the investment, because it's needed in the community. That's the type of development that's needed in the inner city, and I think it's a good thing. So they've got to figure out how to finance it. Yes, you know, misleading the taxpayers a bit is not a good thing, and you know, but I agree with Yael. I think they need to move forward, but I think they do not need to scale. I think they need to build the lab that they plan to build, and to have this lab and only can add three staff, that doesn't make any sense at all. They've got to build it to bring those people in.
Gwen says misleading the public is not a good thing. This is not the first time, is it, that people have been misled about the cost of projects in Kansas City?
No, it happens most of the time. And I'd like to get back to something Yael was talking about, the city versus the police, and that argument behind the scenes is real and is, in fact, as he says, going on. But look, it's the city's money, all of it, even the quote-unquote police fund.
Taxpayer.
The city's control over the police department right now is that it controls the budget. It doesn't have to spend money. And so here they are, and they've run short. The city had every chance to crawl all over the estimates and look at this at the time. They need to dig into their other spending and find the money to make this crime lab what the voters were promised. Because if we need it, and the voters were convinced we did, they wouldn't have voted for it, then we need to have it, and we don't need to charge any more to our citizens than we're charging.
The other option, Mary, is to sell some more bonds, is
There
it
you
not?
go. Well, I think if we're ever going to have CSI Kansas City, we have to go with Gwen's option if we're ever going to be in the big time TV. But that's how people understand what crime labs do, is by watching television. And obviously they bought into the idea that we need a 21st century lab, and we need it in order to solve crimes faster. If we have a rape kit backlog, that's how long? I don't know, years, months? That's not acceptable. I don't care who's running the show. It's not acceptable, and they need to have the big 21st century lab.
Coming soon, CSI KC.
There you go.
As is often the case, Gwen is not only commenting about the news, she is also making it. Gwen is cited as one of the key minority leaders hoping to increase Black and Hispanic membership on the City Council. Gwen told the Charter Review Commission it should do that by creating 12 City Council districts with the boundaries virtually assuring the election of at least 4 Blacks and 1 Hispanic. Each council member would be chosen only by voters in his or her district. This would replace the current system where 6 are elected that way and 6 are elected citywide. The mayor, also elected citywide, is the council's 13th member. And speaking of mayors, 2 Black men have been elected mayor by Kansas City voters in recent years. So is this change, Gwen, necessary to ensure minority representation?
This change is necessary to ensure equal opportunity for the protected class of minorities to elect the representative of their choosing. And one really important aspect to understand about this is that it's not the race of the candidate that is in question. It is the will of the majority minority protected class. And so according to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, when a majority minority community's will can be thwarted by the majority electorate, meaning that if the in-district representatives in an at-large race would prefer one candidate over the candidate that is selected by the majority electorate, then that thwarts or obviates the will of the minority and therefore should be considered under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
So the story that says the goal is to elect so many Blacks and so many Hispanics
that was not
true?
in my statement. No, my statement was about, really referenced the basis of the Voting Rights Act and what we consider to be a pattern in Kansas City, where in the 5th district council, in the 5th council district, the at-large representatives, since Ken Bacchus was left office, which was in 98-99, the at-large representative has not been the person who who got a majority of the minority vote in those districts.
Do you think there's any likelihood the Charter Review Commission is going to recommend something like this?
Well, I think what we asked the Charter Review Commission to do was to look at the law, the Voting Rights Act, and to look at what has happened in Kansas City historically in the 5th district with respect to at-large elections. If you redraw, if they make such a recommendation, what we would prefer to see happen is that the redistricting takes place. 12 districts are drawn that would possibly create more representation for African Americans and also create representation for the Latino community. But it's about equality and empowerment and equal representation.
Gail, you wrote about this. What do you think?
I think practically speaking, the city council has to put the thing on the ballot. They're not going to go for 12 districts. First of all, you already have 6 at-large members on there who think at-large means I'm representing the entire city. Cindy Serco and Ed Ford showed up yesterday. Ed was very strong in saying, well, he would not support 12. Now, the compromise is this idea of 9 in district and 3 at-large, and it might go somewhere. It might be like the next step Kansas City would take. I mean, we are slow to change on some of the stuff. We've had this process for 50 years that Gwen has been talking about. You know, I mean, there are so many different cities. This Charter Review Commission is really at the early stages of what it should be doing. I mean, they don't even have the background necessary
They're supposed
yet.
to be finished fairly
They're not
soon.
going to be. Hey, let me tell you, they're not going to be finished by July 31st.
Well, Gwen, aren't you on the commission?
No,
Oh, you're on the airplane.
No, I'm on the local control.
You're on so many commissions.
And Mike, the point is, they're not going to be finished. They haven't done the research yet. They all have their own ideas what should happen. But when stuff is brought to them, it's like, oh, that's interesting. You know, there was one city that was almost all at large, and they had high minority representation. Then you have one city that is all in district, and it had low minority representation. So kind of going against what Gwen is saying here.
Well, no.
However,
let me explain.
you don't need to explain. That's what the facts were.
No, the facts are there.
That's what the facts were.
No, let me clarify.
I'll get other people in here. Well, man, no, just a second.
What
Yeah,
he
yes.
said, no, what
You
he
not to get-
said, what I said earlier, the race of the candidate does not matter.
Yes, it does
It is
matter.
the will of the electorate. If the majority minority wants a Caucasian to represent them, that's fine. So
I can't believe I'm trying to get Mary to speak more. Mary.
Speak more, Mary.
I respect this debate because it's important. It's terribly important that the Voting Rights Act and Gwen and the African American community and other leaders' understanding of it be heard clearly by the Caucasian community in Kansas
that
City
elected a
and all
black
around.
mayor, but okay.
Yes, but
me?
it's not the you're very
However,
intelligent person. Read the law. I think you
I
might
have
get it.
some counterintuitive feelings about this very subject, and Gwen and I have talked about it because, and one reason.
Well, share them with the rest of us
Yeah,
quickly.
right.
Are you in favor of this or
I think
opposed
that
to
when
it?
you have a minority district, let's take a minority district, in the current system, you have 6 at-large people that have to come and get your vote, plus a mayor, plus the in-district person have to come and campaign in your minority district for your vote.
Right.
And right, says Woody. Thank you. And I think that is a valuable reality of the current system. Now, I don't know that makes it necessary to hold on to for 50 years.
We're almost
we're
out of
talking-
time for this segment. Let me get Woody in here for a few comments.
When you increase the number of districts, the number of votes cast in each election goes down. That empowers political machines that turn out votes. If you don't believe me, for the same reasons, we altered in the same direction how we elected the school board in this city in 1970. If you like the results of that, you'll love Gwen's idea
Not
for
the
City
same.
Hall.
Worked out pretty well, hasn't it?
We're comparing apples to oranges in that case.
The Power and Light District has become the central gathering point for the city, says John Stevens, who runs the Convention and Visitors Association. Stevens reacting to a report from the Downtown Council claiming visitors to downtown have jumped by 445%, from 2.5 million annually to 13.5 million over the past 10 years. The acknowledged unscientific study is likely designed as a counterpoint to the STARS report that private employment downtown has declined by nearly 20% during the same time. Stevens suggests the surge in visitors validates the use of billions of taxpayers' dollars to revamp downtown. Mary, do you agree with him?
Why am I chuckling before you even get to my question? It's nothing jumps 445%. And then Kevin has the audacity to put in his article, this is an unscientific. Yeah, I think it is.
Well, you said acknowledged by the people who did the study. Yeah.
Sure, great. It's jumped by 400. It's always good to issue a report based on percentages because, you know, percentages could just skyrocket. There wasn't anything there. So now there is something there, and it jumped 440 from nothing to something. Does it justify? No, it is not a justification. But if it's factual, it's excellent. Of course, we want millions of people to come so they can pay off what it costs to build. But Mr. Stevens is the new guy at the Convention and Visitors Association. He currently replacing Mr. Hughes, who's apparently ill, and he was with Cordish. You know, but I just think that 19% decline in actual employment downtown probably has to do with the fact that we haven't built a new office building downtown since 1985.
No, and part of the time counted was during the recession or
Yes.
early part of the
Not since 1985.
2000s.
1985, a new office building.
several
and then the border wars
recessions.
throw that in. But all in all, the tremendous increase in the number of people, and we all remember what it used to be like.
Mike, there are 3 things about downtown I think we all have to keep in mind. One is the population downtown has tripled from approximately 6,000 to more than 19,000.
And that was something Mayor Barnes tried very hard
that's helped.
to promote.
It's over the last 10 years. So number of people actually living in the downtown area has gone up. That's good. The second thing is the office population being down is not good. Okay, so that's not good. The third thing is it was right to build the new Sprint Center. That's been a good addition. And it was right to build Power and Light. The Power and Light District cost us $14 million a year, more than expected. And whenever I criticize that, I'm told, well, oh, you didn't want the downtown renovated. No, I wanted downtown renovated at the zero cost to taxpayers that you promised me. You didn't tell me it was going to cost $14 million a year. Now, if you would have told me it was going to cost $14 million a year, and it does cost $14 million, and I knew that going in, then I said, okay, hey, I know what my investment was here. So overall, downtown is a very positive story, and more visitors, more people living there,
another positive aspect
and a
of
cost of improvements.
Well, Gwen, might this study be like a stalking horse for the idea of a downtown publicly financed hotel?
No.
Convention hotel?
Really?
I'm asking. What
Well,
are your
I don't
thoughts?
know. It could be. I think that there's still that, that push that we've got to have this downtown hotel and to try to position it that way. But I agree with Mary. I mean, we haven't added any offices down there, which means we haven't brought that many jobs to downtown, and we're not fueling the economy the way we should.
The GSA is moving downtown. That's a positive note.
Who needs jobs when you got tourists?
All right, we're going to move on. Not guilty, but not really free. Even though George Zimmerman was found to be acting in self-defense when he shot Trayvon Martin, he remains a killer in the view of many, including prominent civil rights leaders. They see race as an issue in the shooting death of 17-year-old Martin, and they want Zimmerman charged with federal civil rights violations. And Martin's family seems likely to seek what they term justice in a civil trial. Omnipresent activist Reverend Al Sharpton says the issue is now moving on to the next level.
At that time, we also said, let's open up a request to the federal government. So asking the Justice Department to come in is not new. The family and Attorney Crump and I met with the U.S. Attorney down there over a year ago and made that request, and the investigation was open. It was suspended during this trial.
Well, the Attorney General, Eric Holder, says that the Department of Justice is going to look again at the case. And I assume, Woody, that we are far from hearing the end of this matter.
I think you can count on that. It's too politically useful to too many people on both sides of the political ends of the political spectrum. I always love to hear from the Reverend Al, can you spell Tawana Brawley Sharpton, about racial peace and equity. Look, there's a reason the prosecution didn't treat this as a race case, and the one juror I've heard speak said, we didn't even talk about it. If you allege it, if you tell the jury, I'm going to show you that his motive was race, then you got to prove it. And you get into all of this guy's, Zimmerman's, conduct in relation to African Americans in his lifetime, including dating one in high school,
prom,
taking one to the prom, including being a civil rights activist in the case of a homeless black guy who was beaten up by the son of a local cop, and nothing was done about it. And Zimmerman was out there fighting to have something done to that kid. And, all that stuff complicates your case. I mean, there's a reason the prosecution didn't do that.
And the
because
FBI,
they couldn't prove it.
And the FBI, as I understand it, has already looked into the matter and found no evidence of any racial animus.
So now the Justice Department, which the FBI is a part of, now the Justice Department is running a website saying, if you know anything that makes Zimmerman look bad in relation to African Americans, call this number or let us know about it. They've already used taxpayer money to send people down there to stir up a demand for the original indictment. At some point, this crosses into prosecutorial misconduct when they bring their civil rights action, which I think, despite everything, they're liable to do.
Yeah. Well, Gwen, what kind of reaction has there been locally?
My reaction to what he just said is that Zimmerman killed an African-American teenager for walking in his neighborhood. Therein lies the race.
But that's
issue.
not what the jury said. Doesn't matter.
And I respect the court. I respect the system. But the fact is, the young man was walking in his neighborhood. He was not breaking any laws. Zimmerman is on record for making racial comments when he saw this young man, and he was told not to emerge from his vehicle. He followed him. So in this case, which was, this whole stand your ground issue, Trayvon Martin had a right to stand his ground. If someone is following you who has not identified himself as a police officer, it gives no justifiable reason for following you. You have a right, you should have a right to defend yourself.
The defense had worked all this out, that he had 4 minutes to go somewhere else before the time he encountered Zimmerman.
To make it, this young man
he wasn't required,
dead,
but
and Zimmerman killed him. Those are the facts. So now, when you look at the Justice Department, will they or will they not come in? I don't think so. I don't think that, we would love for them to do that, but we do want them to continue the investigation that they started and did not stop a year ago. I mean, they put it on hold for this case.
I think the Attorney General is just doing this. Wait until things calm down, and then the whole matter will be eased out of public sight.
Well, I don't think it'll be eased out of public sight. I think the family will have a civil wrongful death suit. That's the most likely next legal step that could be successful.
Now, he can't be put in jail as a result of that.
But he can be forced to testify.
We can find out more about actually what happened that night. We can find out more about him. And there's the kinds of behavior that he engaged in that was not allowed into the trial. The allegations
and the level of evidence is different.
You don't have to have accusations of his being domestic abuse were many with Mr. Zimmerman. But my feelings about this case are very, very strong, and I think I'm just like every other American that wants racial equality as well as peace in this country. I was shocked by the comments of the juror who did not seem to have any empathy, any understanding about the death and the shocking nature of this crime, what I think was a crime. And it went on. She felt necessary to come back and then on a second interview express some empathy for the Trayvon Martin's family and so on. But it was a masterful piece of lawyering on the part of the defense attorneys and the prosecution. They ought to get a new one.
I'll just quote the president: "We're a nation of laws. The jury has spoken, and we will abide by."
Absolutely, I respect the verdict.
And now it's time for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes hype or gripe about people and events in the news. We start with Mary.
Well, I would like to toast someone who played an extremely important role in the trial that we've all just watched. Her name is Rachel Jeantel, and she was the prosecution's main witness. However, she became just a national figure because people judged the way in which she presented her friendship with Trayvon Martin. I think that after it was over, she has now become somebody that the public understands. She said, "I stood my ground, I stood strong, and I spoke for my friend who was not there," and I toast her for it.
Okay, this is a toast for Mayor James, guns, and his idea that, gee, we're going to get pension funds to not invest in gun manufacturing. It's symbolic. It is another indication, I think, of how the city of Kansas City wants to deal with the gun issue, but can't because Missouri says you can't do that. So one of the solutions we come on the editorial board is, well, Missouri passed laws saying you can't enforce federal gun laws in the state. So we think the city council should just pass a law saying, nullify all the state laws that says you can't have your own gun laws in Kansas City. Problem solved, and he can get as tough as he wants.
Since the South is being defamed in the Zimmerman case, a toast to the South as it really is. It is the only section in the country where a majority of African Americans says, "I think I'm treated fairly in this country." It is the only section of the country in which a majority of white school kids attend integrated schools. It is the only section of the country in which half the states have higher voter participation by blacks than by whites. It is the only section of the country which for 30 years has had net in-migration of black people. They are moving there from every other place in this country. Blacks believe that the South is a fair place, indeed the best place in America for them to live, no matter what Al Sharpton says.
Wow, I'd like to hear that quote
How
specifically.
come you
from
haven't
someone.
moved to the
I don't
South?
know. But anyway,
Everybody
I
else
like
is.
I like to
Kansas City.
toast the parents of Trayvon Martin for the resolve and the dignity and the courage and the passion with which they have conducted themselves under what I consider to be devastating circumstances as a parent, to have to bury your son who died at the hand of because he was black and walking in his neighborhood. And so to them I pay tribute and wish them well as we go forward with this tragedy.
And finally, a sincere toast to former Wyandotte County District Attorney Nick Tomasic, who is urging Kansas City, Kansas commissioners to do more about fireworks. KCK is the only city left in the area where restrictions don't exist. Tomasic says the fireworks make the community sound like a war zone, and he's right. July 4th in KCK reminds me of my days in Vietnam, except now I don't hide under my desk, at least not as much. And that is Ruckus for this week. The program airs again Sunday morning at 11:30 and Saturday evening at 6 on KCPT2. And now on behalf of the Ruckettes and the Ruckus crew, I'm Mike Shannon. Thanks for watching and good night.